Good afternoon, and I'm very happy to be able to welcome you back after this winter to ISMEO, the International Association for Mediterranean and Oriental Studies based in Rome. So through the organization of conferences, meetings and presentations, publication, musical performances and archaeological campaigns, ISMEO promotes study, research and cultural collaborations related to countries of Asia, Africa and the Mediterranean basin. At ISMEO, we created this music series called Oriental Music Conversation as a platform to share newest scholarly and creative work with the members and the public. My name is Salvatore Morra and I'm the music curator of ISMEO. The conversation is recorded and it will last for about 15 minutes, after which we will take audience questions. At any time during the event, you can use the chat features on your screen to submit your questions, and please mute yourself during the talk. So now it is my pleasure to welcome to this seventh conversation Dr. Simone Tarsitani, who is an ethnomusicologist and audiovisual specialist who has worked in academia, teaching and research, artistic and international music productions. He has carried out research on Islamic rituals in eastern Ethiopia, and since 2014, he has been collaborating with the Intercultural Institute of Comparative Music Studies in Venice at the Giorgio Cini Foundation in Italy. So welcome to this seventh conversation with the title Mawlūd, the ritual tradition in Harar, Ethiopia. And Simone, the floor is yours.
Hello, Salvatore, and hello, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really grateful for this opportunity and very honored to be here on this platform and have a chance to present my research on Zikri ritual tradition, and in particular the Mawlūd ritual tradition in Harar and surroundings of eastern Ethiopia. So I will start sharing my presentation. Hope everything works all right. And so I understand that we'll take questions at the end of the presentation, so I will not keep an eye on chat or other things. So just open your microphones if there is anything wrong with my audio or visuals. So I'd like to take this opportunity to review my research on Islamic rituals in the city of Harar. In this slide, I summarized the three main stages of my research, and also somehow the funding that allowed these stages of my research. For the first 10 years, I have been studying the Islamic rituals in the city of Harar with various funding bodies, starting from my research for my PhD dissertation up to participation in a workshop on Manzuma on 2010 in Addis Ababa. And after that, I actually expanded my focus to the Islamic rituals in Eastern Ethiopia, thanks to a small grant from the British Academy. And the last project that I had the chance to carry out in that area was funded by the Endangered Archive program at the British Library, where I had a chance to digitize and create an audiovisual collection at Abdallah Sharif's museum in Harar. I'd like to just start contextualizing my research on Zikri, which is essential to understand the Mawlūd ritual tradition of Harar. When I started working at the turn of the millennium, there was a lack of systematic studies on the musical aspects of Islamic rituals and repertoires in Ethiopia. And I immediately realized that I needed a strong interdisciplinary approach to carry out my research, combining historical, anthropological, and linguistic views interviews with music and performance analysis, and I wouldn't have been able to carry out any of my research without the help of many colleagues and local scholars. The research started towards the end of the 1990s, when Ethiopia was just emerging from a long period of restrictions on cultural expression, and the developments that I could observe over the pretty long period of time on this tradition reflect a time of changes in that area of Ethiopia. The Zikri rituals in Harar is a tradition that is derived from a Zikr tradition in mystic Islam, and it presents original forms and practices. And just very generally, it is a ritual tradition which is characterized by a responsorial structure accompanied by drums and wooden sticks. And it is actually a repertoire of sang panegyrics that was the main focus of my interest and my research. There are two main ritual forms that I could observe, the so-called Zikri ritual and the Mawlūd recital. And I will try to start by the first and then move to the second one. The ritual occasions are many, and there are weekly rituals, there are occasional rituals happening for ziyara, which is the ritual visit to a holy place. There are festivities of the Islamic calendar that are honored with Zikri or Mawlūd rituals. These rituals are performed for weddings and for funerary rituals still today. This is to give you an idea of the main festivities of the Islamic calendar that are currently celebrated in Harar. And it is worth to note that in Harar, 4 months are named after the Mawlūd, so that's very meaningful, and it actually comes from the fact that these rituals are very common during those months. And the other important feature is that weddings are an important occasion for some of these rituals, and weddings occur not during certain months of the year, while are very common in other months of the year. Sorry, oops. Okay. My PowerPoint got stuck for a moment. These are the months when they are most common. And now, just to give an introduction to Zikri rituals in Harar, I prepared a short video with documentation from a celebration during the day, which is usually only happening during the main festivities. And this was in fact happening at the end of Ramadan in 2012. Or 2011 actually, and it is in An-Nebigar, just in the courtyard of An-Nebigar, which is a sacred place that I will describe briefly. So I'd like to briefly describe the ritual settings for this ritual tradition. Most of the rituals happen in shrines, and the number of shrines in Harar is hard to count. There are so many, and they're situated in every neighborhood, especially in the vicinities of the 5 gates of the walls that surround the center, the city center of Harar. And the shrines can range from permanent man-made structures to single rocks or trees, and they are everywhere in and outside of Harar. A very peculiar place is the Nabigar, which means house of the prophet. And Nabigars are very typical devotional places, and they're usually built beside a shrine and a Quranic school, and have a very important value as places for gatherings. These are the places where Zikri rituals are celebrated every week during the night between Thursday and Friday. And everyone can attend Zikris here. There is no distinction of gender, social, or intellectual status. Today there are at least 3 Nabigar that are that are active. At least I'm talking about the roughly 10 years when I did most of my research. I'm not aware exactly what is happening today in Harar. I haven't been there for a few years now. And there are also many rituals celebrated in private houses in occasions of weddings most of the times, but also for special celebrations. And this is a photo of one of these rituals in the typical living area of a Harari house. And then finally, especially in occasion of the main Islamic festivities of the calendar, there are public spaces that are used for the celebration of very large gatherings that include also a celebration of Zikri rituals. So the outcome of my research has been, on the one hand, a large body of audiovisual documentation of these practices, and I have performed a systematic analysis of a selection of these rituals, and in particular of these Zikri songs, these Islamic panegyrics, sang panegyrics. And I have performed screening of the sources, transcription and translation of a selection of the lyrics of these songs. I have analyzed the rhythmic accompaniment and isolated 3 rhythmic models, and also transcribed the melodies, trying to understand the modal system on which they are based. It is very important to start by explaining the variety and richness of the literary tradition that is behind this ritual tradition. And the poems performed as Zikri songs are a very wide repertoire, and most of them come from a very old tradition with manuscripts that are centuries old, but there are many that keep being written or performed and invented or reinvented still today. And just to give you an idea of one of the oldest poems that are still performed in Harar is the Mad Habib, which is a composition by Sheikh Abdul Malik, which was performed at the time of my research by Sheikh Mohammed Jan very often, and in the Nabigar associated with the shrine of Sheikh Abadir. And we have various versions of this text from the 19th and 20th century, but Professor Giorgio Banti identified a version from Abdullahi Sharif collection that seems to be from the 18th century. And you see this scrap of paper was the handwritten version of Mohammed Jan, while this is a manuscript from the Vatican Library, and this is a version from Abdullahi Sharif's collection. The Zikri rituals are accompanied by karabu, these large wooden kettle drums, usually coming in pairs or three, and they are played with karabu inchi, and they are accompanied by kabal, which are wooden blocks that are clapped together. It's enough to hand clap, but most of the times Harari used these wooden blocks to accompany the rhythm. And I could isolate three main rhythmic models that accompany the singing of zikris. One is the most common is called Kasida Karabu, and it's a binary form which consists of a continuous alternation of a high-pitched and a low-pitched beat, and it's the most common, and it's used for dancing. And I'll just play a short example. So the kuch kuch is similar to the Kasida Karabu, but it's characterized by some accents and also some pauses that correspond somehow to the structure of the lyrics of the songs. And finally, the Harachala is the most complex type of rhythm, which is generated by the combination of usually 3 or 4 different patterns that are organized depending on the structure of the lyrics and the way the lyrics are performed. In this example, like some of the pauses actually have a beat, but it's quite unique. The most common is the beat that is transcribed here, and in this case there is a drum that is held on top of the main drum, and the stick is beating there when it's bouncing on the main drum. So some of the pauses actually have some hits. I'm gonna try to follow. And so on. Okay, so in terms of the analysis of the melodic repertoire, I did the transcription of the melody and extracted the gamut of a selection of songs. I transposed the transcriptions to have a corresponding tonus finalis, which usually is on the G. My transcriptions are obviously quite normalized, and then I compare them, trying to understand the main modes that are utilized in performing this repertoire. And this is what came out of this analysis, which is published in an article on Musiche from 2011. And so it came out that there are 3 main modes that are all based on different portions of the same diatonic scale, and their characteristic is the range, but especially the different position of the tonus finalis on that scale. So just to give an idea of the summary of the musical traits that I could observe, this is a responsorial form with a leading voice and a chorus performed by all the participants in the ritual. The rhythmic accompaniment is done according to three main patterns that I just described, and the melodies are largely built on this scale according to three main modes. There is no obvious influence of Arabic music as far as I could observe, and it is to be considered monodic singing, but there are frequent and significant forms of heterophony, as you already probably heard, and you will hear more. There is frequent transposition of the melody, especially in the Zikri rituals of the Nebigar, in my observation, which are very long forms. Some of these Zikris can last up to half an hour and can have hundreds of verses. And then another quite typical feature is accelerando. So there is an increasing tempo pace throughout sections of these performances. So having said all this, so this is the core ritual tradition of Zikri, and it is a substantial part of what we will now describe as the Mawlūd ritual. But I'd like to start by contextualizing the Mawlūd ritual tradition by just reminding everyone that Mawlid, which means birth, in Arabic is commonly associated with the celebration of the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad. And Mawlid celebrations have historically been controversial as from a doctrinal point of view, but still very widespread, and are usually centered around the reading of a book or a collection of texts. The Mawlid books are often preceded and eventually alternated with the reading of the Quran and chanting of religious prayers, poems, and songs. And there is a large variety of local forms that often is reflecting adaptation to the cultural identity of the community involved and mediating between Orthodox and popular Islam, and actually also between different cultures and even proximity with other religions. The Mawlid tradition arrived in East Africa through the Sufi orders, and the Mawlid rituals have always played an important role in the religious practices of the Qadiriya, as Trimingham let us know in 1998. And in Harar, Mawlid is locally addressed as Mawlūd. In general, in Mawlid tradition internationally, there are numerous versions of the text, to the point that we can consider Mawlid as a literary genre. In particular, instead, in Harar, Dreves in 1983 listed at least 12 manuscripts of Mawlud-related texts in the 19th century library of Muhammad bin Ali Abd al-Shakur in Harar. So I published most of my findings on Mawlud rituals in Harar in an article published in 2008 on Annal d'Ethiopie number 23. And the Mawlud in Harar expanded and has been, as in many other areas, associated not just to the specific text about the birth of the Prophet, but also a collection of other texts which are related in terms of topic or in terms of the use in the wider liturgy of Mawlud rituals. The most common liturgy adopted in Harar is known as Unwan al-Sharif, which is identified as a book, while there are other editions entitled Kitab Mawlid Sharaf al-Alamin. And these are actually collections of various texts, and they are really the liturgy of the Mawlud rituals in Harar. And the books that are most commonly used or were used during the time of my research between 2000 and 2012, let's say, are based on the printed edition. The printed editions are based on the manuscripts of 1991, 92, and 2000, and they look like this. The 1992 edition is a little smaller, roughly an A5 size, and the 2000 edition is A4 size. There are many more printed editions, and then there is a large collection of old manuscripts. One very interesting feature of Mawlūd books in Harar is that the Zikri songs, panegyrics, are inserted throughout the text. So basically, what seems to be in the origin as a ritual tradition made its way into the literary tradition. So the Zikri very often are really insertions into the main liturgy, and sometimes you just have the refrain of the Zikri, some other times you can have the first few verses, some other times many more. And this can be observed even in fairly old manuscripts, like the one you see in this photo, which is a Mawlūd manuscript from the first half of the 20th century, which I photographed in the private collection of Haji Zakaria Hamid. And now I'd like to describe the two main forms of Mawlūd rituals. That on the left is the Mawlūd that is observed in sacred places, so in the shrines mostly, and the one on the right is the Mawlūd that can be observed in weddings, which is usually shorter. So in the sacred places, the rituals happen during the night and are at least all night long, starting after sunset and lasting until dawn, but sometimes they can even last more than that. And while in the weddings, the time for the Mawlūd rituals is the Sunday morning, and it starts around 8 a.m. in the morning with the reading of the Quran, and it has to end around noon for the wedding lunch. So it is limited to roughly 3, maximum 4 hours. And the rituals in the shrines are, of course, much more articulated. So there are more sections, like as mentioned here, the Aurad, the Asil Nafsi, Ya Rabbi Hailana, which are very popular poems in Harari ritual tradition, but also, of course, many more Zikri can be performed throughout the ritual. So at this point, I would like to show a video that is a video from a wedding in Harar, a wedding of 2003, it is performed on a Sunday morning, and this short video of about 4 minutes illustrates these sections. First, there is antiphonal singing, which is called burda, and that is a way of performance where the group of participants spontaneously divides into 2 groups, and they alternate reading verses from one of these manuscripts or printed texts. Then there is a Zikri song, which is usually not taken from the books, and any of the participants will stand up and start singing the refrain, and everyone will follow with the refrain. And usually during this Mawlūd of weddings, the Zikris are the opportunity for standing up and dancing. And then you can see the final blessing of the Khatib, which is the conductor of the ritual for the bridegroom, which can be seen dancing with a colored hat, typical of Harari tradition, during the Zikri song. And then at the end, there is the beginning of the wedding lunch. So I'm just going to play this video from 2003.
كنا لكل كامل العالمين ولم يجر بار الحديث فوق صالح ترميم موج من الابطال موت من كل موت لله موت يا ذي الموت المعتلمين من بعد موت يا رسول الله
Okay, so this was Mawlūd of a Harari wedding in Harar, in a traditional Harari house on a Sunday morning. And now in the next video, I tried to put together snippets of a Harari wedding in Addis Ababa, and in the same year, in 2003. And this was a great opportunity for me because it allowed me to understand a lot of things about how Harari like to celebrate these rituals. And for Harari, it's very important to have a good Mawlūd ritual. And within the ritual, it is very important to have a good Zikri song performance. And that is why very good zakers, as they're called, are invited to this to these performances. And in this case, a group of Zakers was traveling to Addis just on the Saturday to join the Mawlūd celebration of the Sunday morning. And I was in touch with them for my research. And so they told me about this, they invited me, and I went with them. So this video starts with a pretty messy and shaky footage of this group of Zakers on a minibus, and we were traveling all together, and they were singing Zikri during the trip. So I love that memory, and then I actually tried to give an impression of the various stages of a Harari wedding in the more modern metropolitan context of Addis Ababa. And so there are various moments with the female repertoire that is performed throughout various fundamental stages of the wedding ritual. And then there is the Mawlūd, and all those happen during the Saturday. And then on the Sunday morning there is the Mawlūd, and then the bride and bridegroom get together and get in a car and leave. And at that point, actually, you will hear different songs of different cultures, and which is a very interesting mixture that is observed in the celebration of these Harari weddings in Harar and everywhere in Ethiopia. Here we are.
أبو دي جوا أحمد دي جوا حبي تورمان محمد دي جوا واي ما هي نبي سلام على سراج أحمد محمد دي جوا دي جوا أحمد دي جوا صديق دي ما سكي محمد دي جوا واي ما هي نبي سلام على
I pause here for a second just to highlight what you're about to see. There is a pretty dramatic contrast, and there is the transition between this traditional performance of the female repertoire, and then there is a musician performing the modern Harari pop songs, and you will see it's a very stark transition. Sorry, the video reset. I was not expecting this, so I'm gonna have to find.
وكان نورا في جبين آدم حين أمرت الملائكة له بالسجود والبركة نجى الله الخليل من نار النمرود وهو دعوة الله وبشارة المسيح ولولاه ما سلم من الخلق ولا بدي الذبيح سأل موسى الكريم
أن يكون من أمته وبه نال صفوة وبعزته رقي إدريس مكانا عليا ونال الحلوة وفاخر بالأملاك وتطاولت الأرض على السماء بردودها والتعصم يفوق المطالب. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله يا حبيب الله
Okay, so this was a summary of 2 days of a modern Harari wedding in Addis Ababa. And in the middle, in the Sunday morning, there was the Mawlūd ritual, which is very similar in structure and performance style to what you have seen in the one that was celebrated in Harar. And you could observe again those two ways of performance, which are based on the text, on the written text. And there is the khatib, the conductor, who is reading, reciting certain lines, and then all the group of participants will read others. So it's all memorized. It's a melodic formulas memorized on the text, and then there are these antiphonal singing passages, which can be separate poems or part of the liturgy, and then the Zikri songs, which always have the use of the karabu drums accompaniment, although you may have observed that karabu drums are also used to accompany some of the liturgy where the audience is reading and performing passages of the book, of the prose text, so to speak. And the most striking feature of this video story is the continuous alternation of these moments of sacred songs and non-sacred songs and different traditions, modern, traditional, or different cultures. It is very interesting mix of traditions that come together in these long weekends of celebration for the weddings. And somehow a similar structure happened also in Harar, but in the more traditional setting. So I'd like to conclude by showing a final video which takes us to yet a very different context, which is the celebration in Abdul Qadir al-Jilani Shrine, which is one of the most important shrines in the vicinities of Harar. It is within Harari region, and it's a very big shrine entitled to the founder of the Qadiriya order. And this occasion is actually the Mawlid al-Nabawi, so it's the birthday of the Prophet on the Islamic calendar. And so yet again we see very different renditions of this tradition, because the majority of the participants are Oromo in this ritual, and so there are various the text they're using for the Mawlud is the same, the Harari Mawlud book, but then the Zikri will be in mostly in Oromo language. And I also filmed the Zikri of the female participants of this ritual, which would deserve a different story, but another time. So I will now play this last video. Thank you very much.